The galaxy was a noisy, brilliant tapestry of civilizations. For millennia, great empires had risen and fallen, their names echoing through the stars: the Vel, the Cathari, the Praxian Conclave. They built glittering ring worlds and wielded energies that could snuff out suns. They traded, they bickered, they formed grand alliances, and they fought devastating wars. Their councils were filled with the chatter of 1,000 languages, all debating matters of great importance: resource rights, technological patents, border treaties. In all this galactic noise, one thread was consistently overlooked, a whisper lost in the roar. They were the Muriog. Their world, Silin, orbited a quiet yellow star in a region of space most travelers marked as empty on their star charts. It was not a rich world. It had no rare mineral veins, no exotic energy signatures, no strategic location. It was a world of soft, rolling hills, deep, calm seas, and forests of gentle phosphorescent flora. The Muriog themselves were small, their forms delicate and vaguely humanoid, with skin that held a faint internal bioluminescence, like moonlight seen through alabaster. They did not build cities of metal and light, but lived in harmony with their environment, their settlements woven into the very trees and cliffs, their greatest trait, and the one that doomed them to irrelevance was their nature. The Muriog were empaths and telepaths of the pure, passive kind. They did not shout thoughts. They projected feelings, images, impressions. Their communication was a symphony of emotion and shared memory, beautiful but utterly useless to the transaction-driven minds of the galactic powers. To the Vel, masters of logic, they were illogical. To the Cathari, fierce warriors, they were weak. To the Praxian merchants, they had nothing to sell. Over the centuries, many had come. Scout ships would land, scanners sweeping the planet. The Muriog would gather, offering silent feelings of welcome and curiosity. The scouts would find no dilithium, no neutronium, no trillium crystals. Their reports were always the same: indigenous pre-technical sentience. No strategic or economic value. Recommend non-interference status. And they would leave. The Muriog would watch their ships disappear into the sky, feeling the fading echo of dismissal, a cold, hollow sensation they learned to know well. Humanity's arrival on the galactic stage was recent, noisy, and met with polite, distant curiosity. Humans were energetic. They were not the strongest, nor the smartest, nor the most ancient. They were adaptable, stubborn, and perplexingly varied in their opinions. They had just been granted a provisional seat on the Outer Fringe Council, a minor body for minor species. Their ship, the Un's Guardian, was a sturdy, unremarkable vessel on a survey mission, mapping nebulae and cataloging asteroid fields. Captain Min-Soo Park sat on the bridge, watching the starfield drift by. He was a practical man with a calm face, his dark hair kept neatly short. His first officer, Yuna Kim, stood beside the navigation console, her sharp eyes checking their course against the star charts. The bridge was quiet, the hum of the engines a familiar background noise. Long-range scans show nothing but cosmic dust and quiet stars for the next 3 light years. "Captain," Yuna reported. Another thrilling day on the frontier. Min-Soo allowed a small smile. "Peaceful is good, Yuna. After the excitement. On Tau Ceti, I'll take peaceful." The excitement had been a misunderstanding with a Vel mining drone that had nearly turned into an incident. Humanity was still learning the delicate dance of galactic etiquette, a dance where everyone else seemed to know the steps. "Captain," said Ensign J, a young man at the sensor station, "I'm picking up an anomalous reading. Not energy. It's a biosignature fluctuation. Very faint, very strange. It's modulating almost like a signal, but it's on a psychic carrier wave. The empathic translator is hiccuping. The empathic translator was a piece of salvaged K-Thari technology, jury-rigged by human engineers. It could detect strong emotional wavelengths and basic intentional thought patterns, a useful tool for first contact scenarios. Mostly, it just hummed quietly, picking up the general mood of the crew. Now, its display was flickering with soft, pulsing colors. The AI's voice, usually neutral, sounded uncertain. Pattern recognized. Nonverbal distress signal. Source: planetary body designated Cylon Sigma Draconis 7. Sentient origin. Signal intensity: low. Signal persistence: continuous. Yuna leaned over the display. Cylon, that's in the registry. Listed as a protected pre-technical sentient world. The Muryog. The file says no contact protocol, level 1. Observation only. What's the nature of the distress? Minsu asked, his brow furrowed. The AI processed the fluctuating signal. Translation approximate. Concepts received: fear of loss, deep sorrow, imminent danger. A plea for witness? Witness? Jay echoed. Not for intervention, the AI clarified. Just for witness. To be seen before the end. A heavy silence settled on the bridge. The starfield outside seemed suddenly colder. We're the nearest ship, Yuna said quietly, pulling up the galactic logistics net. By several weeks. The distress signal is on a psychic frequency most ships don't even monitor. No one else is hearing this. Minsu looked at the planetary readout for Cylon, a small blue-green world. No orbital infrastructure. No energy weapons. No defensive shields. Just the faint, sad pulse of a psychic cry for help, ignored by a galaxy too busy to listen. Set a new course, Minsu said, his voice firm. For Cylon, maximum sustainable speed. Yuna looked at him. Captain, the protocols. The Council. I know the protocols, Yuna, Minsu said, his eyes still on the pulsing light of the translator. They say to ignore non-essential transmissions from pre-technical species. To log it and move on. But that signal isn't a transmission. It's a feeling. It's the feeling you get when you see something beautiful about to be destroyed, and you're all alone. He paused, turning to face his crew. Humanity joined this community to be part of something bigger. But if being part of it means learning to ignore a cry for help because it's not strategically important, then maybe we learned the wrong lesson. Plot the course. As the Guardian turned, its engines flaring to life, it moved against the tide of galactic indifference. Ahead lay a quiet world and a people who had only ever known being overlooked. Behind was a galaxy that had long since decided the Muryog did not matter. For the first time in centuries, a ship was coming to Cylon not to scan and leave, but to answer a call no one else could even hear. The journey to Cylon was tense. On the bridge of the Una's Guardian, the soft, pulsing signal from the planet was a constant presence. It was not a sound, but a feeling that seeped into the edges of the mind, a quiet, persistent sorrow. Ensign J monitored it, reporting any changes. It's like a heartbeat, Captain, he said. Slow but steady. And sad. Very sad. Captain Minsu Park spent the time reviewing the scant data on the Muryog. The files were brief and cold. Species, Muryog. Capabilities, low-level telepathic, empathic communication. Threat assessment, negligible. Economic value, none. Galactic Council recommendation, non-interference. Observe from a distance. He closed the file, frustrated. There was nothing about what they loved, what they feared, what they hoped for. They were a statistic. First Officer Yuna Kim approached him. We're receiving a tight beam communique from Earth Central, Captain. It's Ambassador Junsu Lee. On the main screen, the face of Ambassador Jun-Soo appeared. He was an older man with a kind but weary face. "Captain Park," he began, "we've reviewed your change of course. The Galactic Council has been notified. They have concerns." "I imagine they do," Min-Soo replied calmly. Junsu sighed. "The Kallax Alliance has filed a mining claim on Sigma Draconis 7. They have all the proper forms, stamped and approved by the Resource Allocation Bureau. They plan to begin mineral extraction in 3 standard days." Min-Soo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They're going to strip mine a world with a sentient species on it? The Muriog are classified as non-technical, non-interfering sentients, Junsu said, reading from a document. Under Galactic Code 7-42, their presence does not preclude resource extraction, provided it does not cause active, direct genocide. The Kallax plan is to relocate the native population to a designated sanctuary zone on the planet's northern continent. "The signal we're picking up isn't coming from a zone." "Ambassador," Yuna cut in, her voice sharp. "It's coming from the entire planet. It's a feeling of total loss. They don't want to be moved. They're begging not to be erased." Jinsu's expression was pained. "I believe you. But the Council's position is clear. The Kallax have the legal right. If we interfere, we violate interstellar law. We could lose our provisional seat. Our trade licenses could be revoked. It could set human advancement back decades." The words hung in the air. Min-Soo looked at the main viewer, where the star Cylon orbited was now a bright point of light. "What is your advice, Ambassador?" Junsu was quiet for a long moment. "My advice as a diplomat is to stand down. Observe, file a formal protest, and use the proper channels." He leaned closer to the screen, his voice dropping. "My advice as a man, Captain, is to look. Just go down there and look. See what everyone else has refused to see. Then decide what being human means out here." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Min-Soo turned to Yuna. "Prepare a shuttle. You and I are going down. No weapons. Just recorders and the empathic translator." The shuttle descended through Cylon's atmosphere, which was clean and carried a faint floral scent. They broke through the cloud layer, and the world unfolded below them. It was breathtakingly beautiful, but not in a grand, dramatic way. It was gentle. Forests of tall, willowy trees with leaves that shimmered with soft blue and green light covered the hills. Rivers glowed with gentle bioluminescence. There were no roads, no smoke, no scars of industry. They landed in a small, grassy clearing. The air was warm and still. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, from the edges of the forest, they appeared. The Muriog were smaller than Min-Soo had imagined, barely coming up to his chest. Their skin was smooth and pale, emitting a soft silver light from within. They had large, dark eyes that held no white, just deep, endless pools of quiet intelligence. They did not speak. They simply stood, watching. Yuna held up the handheld empathic translator. Its screen, which usually displayed wavelength graphs, began to fill with colors and shapes. "It's working," she whispered. Min-Soo took a slow step forward. He placed a hand over his heart and gave a slight bow, a universal gesture of peace he hoped they would understand. The reaction was immediate. A wave of warmth washed over him, a feeling of cautious curiosity, like the first touch of sunlight after a long winter. It was not in his ears, but in his mind and heart. He saw a fleeting image of his own face, reflected back at him through a calm pool of water that one of the Muriog, whose light was slightly brighter than the others, stepped forward. It raised a slender hand. As it did, the translator in Yuna's hands hummed, and the world around Min-Soo seemed to shift. He was no longer just in the clearing. He saw visions, not as pictures on a screen, but as lived experiences shared directly into his consciousness. He saw a Vel scout ship, sleek and cold, landing decades ago. He felt the Muriag's innocent wonder, their attempt to share the beauty of a glowing sunset. He felt the Vel's scanning beams, a sensation of being picked apart and found wanting, followed by a chilling wave of disinterest before the ship lifted off. He saw a Cathari warrior, towering and fierce, laughing as it tested its plasma blade on a crystal formation the Muriog held sacred. He felt their profound confusion at the concept of wanton destruction, and then the crushing weight of being deemed weak. He saw Praxian merchants, their faces hidden behind data masks, scanning the forests. He felt the Muriag's offer of peaceful coexistence and the merchants' blunt, transactional dismissal. No market value. The visions came faster, a cascade of silent rejections spanning centuries. Each one ended with the same hollow, cold feeling of being erased, of being declared not important. The psychic wound was deep and old. Then the vision changed. It showed the present. Massive, blocky Kallax mining landers, ugly and functional, crashing into the glowing forests. He felt the Muriag's terror as the earth shook. He saw their sacred groves being fed into grinding processors. He felt their desperate, unified cry, a psychic scream that was not for help, but simply for witness. For someone, anyone, to know they had been here, and that they had cared for their world. The vision ended as suddenly as it began. Minsu stumbled, his eyes wet. He looked at Yuna and saw she was crying silently, the translator hanging loosely in her hand. The lead Muriog looked at them. This time, a single, clear concept formed in Minsu's mind, simple and devastating. You see? It was not a question. It was a statement of profound shock. For the first time, someone had come, and had not just looked, but had seen. Minsu, his voice thick with emotion, could only nod. We see? A new feeling washed over them then, from all the gathered Muriag. It was a gratitude so immense it was painful, mixed with a deep, resigned grief. They had been seen. That was more than they had ever expected. The concept of protection, of someone actually standing up for them, did not even seem to exist in their shared consciousness. Being witnessed was the only gift they had asked for. As Minsu and Yuna walked back to the shuttle in heavy silence, the weight of the galaxy pressed down on them. They had not found a problem to solve. They had found a profound injustice that the entire universe accepted as normal. The law was on the Kallax's side. Power was on the Kallax's side. Tradition was on the Kallax's side. All humanity had was a choice: to follow the rules, or to do what was right. Back on the Guardian, Minsu looked at the crew on the bridge, at Yuna's determined face. He opened a channel to Earth. Ambassador Junsu, he said, his voice now clear and steady, devoid of all doubt. We have made contact. We have seen. And we are not leaving. The message from Captain Minsu Park created a storm back on Earth. In the halls of the United Earth Directorate, arguments raged. Some leaders saw only the risk, the wrath of the Kallax Alliance, a powerful military-industrial conglomerate, the sanctions from the Galactic Council, the potential isolation of humanity. Others saw the raw feed from the empathic translator, the shared sorrow of the Muriog, and felt a moral fire they could not ignore. Ambassador Junsu Lee was at the center of it all. He played the recording from Cylon for the Directorate. There were no screams, no violent images, just the haunting, emotional resonance of loss projected by a gentle people. When it ended, the room was silent. This is not a military decision, Junsu finally said, his voice quiet but firm. It is a question of identity. Do we join the galaxy in looking away? Or do we define ourselves differently? The vote was close, but it passed. The order was sent. UN's guardian is to hold position. Reinforcements are being mobilized. Diplomatic channels are to be engaged. Humanity would stand. On Cylon's orbit, the Guardian was no longer alone. Two other human vessels, the frigate UN's Resolute and the support ship UN's Beacon, had jumped into the system. They were not warships of great power, but they were sturdy, and their crews were resolved. On the planet below, the work began. A team led by linguist Hannah Choi had come down on the Beacon. Hannah was a small, patient woman with eyes that missed nothing. Her tools were not scanners, but sketchpads, musical toners, and the most sensitive empathic amplifiers humanity could build. She sat in the clearing with the Muriog, not demanding, just being present. Communication was slow and profound. The Muriog, who understood intention more than words, sensed her genuine curiosity. They showed her not just feelings, but memories how the glowing moss on the North Rocks sang a different tune in the winter, how the deep pools in the forest held the history of the rains, how the patterns of light in the leaves told stories of seasons past. Hannah began to understand. Their telepathy was not just emotion. It was a deep connection to life, a perception of the flow of things. One afternoon, as she shared a simple memory of her childhood home by the sea, the lead Muriog, whom she had come to think of as Glimmer, touched her hand. A new vision flooded Hannah's mind. It was sharp and clear, unlike the emotional impressions from before. She saw the Guardian and the other human ships in orbit. Then she saw three jagged, aggressive shapes dropping out of faster-than-light travel Kellex mining cruisers, flanked by smaller attack drones. She saw pulses of orange energy firing. She felt a jolt of panic, and then a specific, terrifying detail. The chronometer on her own datapad, reading a time exactly 48 standard hours from the present moment. She gasped, pulling her hand back. The vision ended. Glimmer looked at her, and Hannah felt a clear, succinct concept. What will be? Soon, they weren't just empaths. They were precogs. Their connection to the flow of life let them see the immediate future, especially moments of strong violence or change. They had seen their own destruction for years, a slow-motion nightmare. Now they saw the battle to come. Hannah rushed her findings to Minsu on the Guardian. They know the Kallax are coming, Captain. In 2 days. And they showed me. It's a certainty. This changed everything. Minsu called a council with his officers and Ambassador Jonsu via tight beam. We cannot win a direct fight, stated Captain Ito of the Resolute, a seasoned tactical officer. The Kellex cruisers are equipped with planet cracker mining lasers. They are weapons in all but name. Our shields might withstand a few hits, but not for long. Then we do not fight them directly, Minsu said. We use the time we have. We broadcast. We shame them. We make the whole galaxy watch what happens here. Junsu, from light years away, nodded. The Kellex rely on indifference. They file their forms and do as they please in the quiet, empty corners of space. We must turn Cylon into the brightest stage in the galaxy. A three-pronged plan was formed. First, the UNZ Beacon began deploying hundreds of small, stealth sensor drones into high orbit and across Cylon's surface. They were not weapons, but cameras and transmitters. Second, Hannah and her team worked with the Muriog. Using shared imagery, they learned the locations of the most sacred, irreplaceable sites, the ancient heartwood tree, the crystal-singing caves, the first glow lagoon. The human ships used their limited tractor beams and shield projectors to place protective energy barriers over these areas, not to stop an attack, but to mark them clearly for all to see. The third part was the word. Junsu and his diplomatic team opened every channel. They sent the empathic recordings from the first contact, the visions of past indifference, to every news service, every neutral species, every member of the Galactic Council. They filed an official legal challenge to the mining claim. not on technicalities, but on a new, bold argument that the non-interference clause was being used as a tool for genocide by neglect. They accused the Kelaks, and by extension the Council that allowed their rules, of ethical failure. The galaxy began to stir. It was not a roar of support, but a murmur of unease. The Vel Science Directorate requested the raw psychic data for study. A few minor species, ones who had also felt the cold shoulder of the great powers, sent cautious messages of observation. 47 hours after Hannah's vision, the Kelaks arrived. Their ships were brutal blocks of durasteel, painted in harsh industrial orange and black. They did not hail the human vessels. They simply moved into orbit, their weapons powering up. A harsh, grating voice came over the general frequency. Human vessels. This is Overseer Borzan of the Kelaks Alliance. You are in violation of a legally sanctioned extraction operation. Withdraw immediately, or be removed. On the bridge of the Guardian, Minsu took a breath. He opened a channel, making sure it was being broadcast on the same public band his diplomats were using. Overseer Borzan, this is Captain Minsu Park of the United Earthship Guardian. We are here under the auspices of sentient observation and protection. The Muriog of Silan are a peaceful, intelligent species. We have filed a formal injunction against your operation. We ask you to withdraw and submit to a Galactic Council review. A loud, dismissive laugh echoed through the bridge. Review? The Council reviews profit sheets, human, not the feelings of glowworms. You have 5 minutes to clear our firing lane. This is your only warning. The channel cut. The Kelaks cruisers began to move into attack formation. All ships, execute Plan Bastion, Minsu said, his voice calm. The human ships did not form a battle line. Instead, they moved in a wide, dispersing pattern. The Resolute positioned itself directly between the lead Kelak ship and the Harkwood Tree continent. The beacon, unarmed, began broadcasting a live, multi-spectrum feed from every drone on the planet, highlighting the glowing, protected sites and the small, gathered groups of Muriog looking up at the sky. Kelak's weapon systems are locking on, Yuna reported, her hands steady over her console. Hold position, Minsu said, on the surface. Hana stood with Glimmer and a group of Muriog in a clearing. They were not hiding. They looked up, their soft light pulsing in unison. Hana felt it then, a concerted effort from the Muriog. They were not projecting fear or sadness. They were projecting a single, powerful, unifying feeling. Peace. It was a wave of calm, of deep, unshakable stillness, aimed not at the humans, but outward, towards the cold metal ships in orbit. On the Kelak's bridge, Overseer Borzan sneered as he gave the order to fire. But as his finger hovered over the command, a strange wave of dizziness passed over him. A memory long buried, surfaced not his own, but implanted, the feeling of a quiet pond at sunset on his homeworld, a feeling he had not had since he was a child. For a fraction of a second, his rage faltered. Across his ship and the others, gunners hesitated, confused by a sudden, inexplicable sense of calm. The first volley of orange plasma lanced out, but it was slightly off target. One bolt meant for the Guardian sizzled harmlessly through empty space. Another, aimed at a mining zone on the surface, was drawn off course by a last-minute tractor beam pull from the Resolute, detonating in a barren valley. The battle had begun. But the first move, the move of pure force, had stumbled against a shield of shared memory and projected peace. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time, the Muriog were not just being seen. They were fighting back in the only way they knew how. The war for Silan was a strange and desperate dance. It was not a clash of titans, but a story of stubborn shields against brutal hammers. The Kelak's plasma bolts tore through the sky, bright and violent. The human ships, outgunned and outnumbered, did not fire back with their own limited weapons. Instead, they moved. Captain Minsu Park's orders were clear. We are not here to destroy them. We are here to protect. Draw their fire. Keep it away from the marked sanctuaries. Make every shot they take cost them in the eyes of the galaxy. The UN's Resolute was the brawn of the operation. Under Captain Ito, it weaved between the Kellex cruisers, its shields flaring a brilliant blue-white with every hit. It fired no weapons. Instead, it used its tractor beams and carefully launched chaff pods, trying to physically nudge the incoming fire off course. A plasma bolt meant for a glowing forest below would suddenly veer and explode against a bare mountainside, the impact recorded and broadcast by 100 tiny drones. Shields at 60%. Ito called over the comms, his voice strained as another blast rocked his ship. On the Guardian, Minsu watched the tactical display, his heart a drum in his chest. They were buying time, second by painful second. The live feed from the planet was the most important weapon. It showed the Muryog, standing together in their clearings, their soft light a stark contrast to the fiery streaks in their sky. It showed the human-made energy domes, shimmering over the heartwood tree and the singing caves, taking glancing blows and holding. For now, on the surface, Hana Choi felt the battle in two ways. The ground shook with distant impacts. But more powerfully, she felt the emotional storm from the Muryog. They were not projecting fear anymore. They were focused, united. With Glimmer at their center, they stood in a wide circle, their inner light pulsating in a slow, rhythmic pattern. They were pushing waves of that profound calm towards the Kellex ships, a psychic effort that made the air around Hana hum. She saw sweat on Glimmer's brow, a physical sign of the immense mental strain. It was working, in small, crucial ways. But it could not last. Overseer Borzen, on the Lieb Kellex cruiser, slammed a fist on his console. The strange, soft feelings clouding his crew's focus infuriated him. Enough of this. Target the source. Full barrage on that continent grid 7. Wipe that glowing nest off the map. A new, more dangerous targeting pattern lit up the Guardian's display. The Kellex ships were turning their heavy mining lasers, capable of slicing deep into planetary crust, towards the largest gathering of Muryog, the very clearing where Hana stood. They're going for a saturation strike on the primary sanctuary. Yuna yelled. The dome won't hold against that. Minsu didn't hesitate. Guardian to Resolute. Intercept course. Put yourself in the firing lane. Minsu, that's suicide. Captain Ito's voice crackled back. It's the mission. Minsu shouted. All power to forward shields. Do it. The Resolute was closer, already damaged. It was the Guardian that turned sharply, engines groaning in protest. Minsu's ship surged forward, placing its bulk directly between the Kellex weapons and the planet below. On the main viewer, the charging beams of the mining lasers looked like the eyes of angry gods. Brace for impact. Minsu called. The world turned white and sound roared. The Guardian shuddered violently. Alarm screamed. The lights flickered and died, replaced by red emergency strips. The smell of burnt wiring filled the air. Direct hit on forward sections. Yuna coughed, pulling herself up. Shields are gone. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 5. Life support failing. The clearing? Minsu asked, his voice rough. Yuna checked a flickering feed. The strike was diffused. The sanctuary dome held. The Muryog are safe. She looked up, her face grim. But we took the full force. We're dead in the water. The Guardian drifted, a wounded beast trailing atmosphere and debris. On the surface, Hana saw the ship take the hit, saw it go dark. A wave of anguish human. This time washed over her from the crew. She cried out, a sound lost in the noise. Glimmer stumbled, the circle of Mayog wavering. The psychic wave of peace faltered, replaced by a spike of shared human pain and a returning tide of their own deep fear. Borson saw his opening on his scanners. The human flagship is crippled. Now finish the job. Fire at will on the target. But as his gunners prepared to fire the killing blow to the planet, new alerts chimed on his panel. Overseer. Multiple FTL signatures entering the system. They are not human. They are broadcasting neutral observer codes. From the glittering darkness, new ships arrived. Not warships. A sleek Vel science vessel, its scanners already actively recording everything. A small convoy from the Torak, a species of traders who had once been steamrolled by the Kelaks. A single elegant craft from the reclusive Lumin, who valued beauty above all. They had been watching the broadcast. They had seen the humans take a stand for a silent people. They had seen the Muryeg's light. And they had come, not to fight, but to witness. Their presence filled the space around Sillin, a silent jury. Then the most important signature flashed. A ship bearing the official seal of the Galactic Council itself dropped out of FTL. A stern, resonant voice filled every channel. Overriding Borson's, this is Arbiter Kalen of the Galactic Council to all vessels in the Sigma Draconis system. Cease hostilities immediately. This action is now under Council jurisdiction. Borson was furious. Arbiter, we are exercising a legal claim. These humans are trespassing and provoking. Your claim is under review, Overseer Borzan. The Arbiter's voice was icy. A review prompted by the evidence provided by the human delegation. Evidence that includes what appears to be the deliberate targeting of a sentient species population center. Stand down your weapons, or your Alliance's licenses will be revoked across Council space. It was a threat that hit the Kelaks where it mattered, their profits. With a snarl that echoed over the open comms, Borzon gave the order. The Kelaks' weapons powered down. Their ships hung in orbit, hostile but still. On the crippled Guardian, Minsu let out a shuddering breath. The immediate danger was over. Damage report. Casualties. UNO is already coordinating. Hull breaches are sealed for now. We have injured. No fatalities. Life support is stable on remaining decks. She looked at him, exhaustion and relief in her eyes. We held. Below, Hannah rushed to Glimmer's side. The Muryog was breathing heavily, their light dimmed. But as Hannah touched their shoulder, a new feeling came through, not peace, not sorrow, but something fragile and new. It was a spark of hope, warm and tentative. The Muryog looked at the human ships, one dark and wounded, the other still shining. They looked at the new, neutral vessels in their sky. For centuries, ships had brought only dismissal or destruction. Today, one ship had come to listen. Others had come to shield. And now, more had come to see. The battle of weapons was done. But the true battle, the battle to make a silent people matter in a loud galaxy, had just been won. The cost was written in the scarred hull of the Guardian, and in the weary but unbroken spirit of its crew. They had chosen to be a shield, and for the first time, the universe had been forced to look at what and who was behind it. The silence after the battle was heavier than the noise had been. The Un's Guardian hung in orbit, a dark, scarred sentinel. Repair drones from the beacon crawled over its hull like metallic insects, sealing the wounds left by the Kelaks mining lasers. Inside, the crew moved with the tired efficiency of those who had stared into the void and not blinked. Captain Minsu Park walked the dimmed corridors, checking on his people. His arm was in a sling from a fall during the impact, but his eyes were clear. They had held the line. On the surface, the work was different. Hannah Choi stayed with the Muryog. The projected feelings of calm had ceased, replaced by a quiet, watchful wonder. Glimmer's light had returned, brighter now. With Hana's help and a team of xenobiologists, they began the first true dialogue. It was not an exchange of words, but of concepts. The Muriog shared the intricate connections of their world, how the glowing rivers fed the forests, how the forests cleansed the air, how the air carried the songs of the crystals. Humans shared blueprints for low-impact shelters, for water purification that mimicked the natural moss filters, for ways to help the Muriog preserve their world while perhaps understanding the galaxy beyond. The Galactic Council's inquiry was swift and public. The images were undeniable. The Kellax firing on a shielded sanctuary, the human ship taking the hit to protect it, the Muriog's silent, luminous presence throughout. Overseer Borzen's legal claim crumbled under the weight of what Ambassador Jun-Su Lee called the morality of seeing. The mining license for Sillin was permanently revoked. The Kellax Alliance was fined heavily and saw their reputation, their most valuable asset, tarnished across 100 worlds. But the real change came a week later. A formal summons arrived for Ambassador Jun-Su, and notably, for a representative of the Muriog. They were to attend a special session of the Galactic Council on the Citadel, the great ring-shaped station at the galaxy's heart. No one knew what to expect. Jun-Su, in his formal diplomatic attire, stood in the vast, circular chamber. The air was filled with the murmurs of 1,000 species. Then Hana entered, wearing a simple engineer's jumpsuit. Beside her walked Glimmer. The Muriog's soft light seemed to dim in the harsh artificial brilliance of the chamber. A wave of curiosity, mixed with traces of the old dismissal, rippled through the assembled delegates. The arbiter, Calling, presided. This session is convened to determine the status of the species known as the Muriog, and to address the actions taken in the Sigma Draconis system. The Vel delegate was the first to speak, its voice logical and crisp. The human intervention, while emotionally provocative, was a violation of established protocol. Sentiment is not a basis for interstellar law. Jun-Su stepped forward. With respect, delegate, it is the basis for any meaningful law. The protocols were built to ignore the Muriog. We simply chose to see them. We propose a new category, protected sentient species, with a guaranteed voice in matters concerning their own survival. There were objections, debates about precedent and procedure. The chamber buzzed with argument. Throughout it, Glimmer stood perfectly still, observing. Hana felt a growing anxiety from the Muriog, a fear that this grand chamber was just another form of dismissal. Then, Glimmer did something no one expected. It stepped away from Hana, towards the center of the chamber floor. It raised its slender hands, not in protest, but as if cradling something invisible. It closed its large, dark eyes. A hush fell. Not out of respect, but out of confusion. Then, the empathic projector in the ceiling, installed for species who communicated by scent or field, suddenly activated. Glimmer was not speaking. It was broadcasting. A feeling washed over every being in the chamber. It was the feeling of the first human landing, the cautious curiosity of Minzu and Yuna. It was the shared sorrow of centuries of neglect. It was the terrifying vision of the Kellax attack. It was the decisive protective surge as the Guardian moved into the line of fire. It was the profound, grateful peace when the shooting stopped. And finally, it was the new, fragile sensation now growing on Sillin. Hope intertwined with the steady, respectful presence of the human aid workers. It was the entire story, transmitted not as data, but as lived experience. For a full minute, the Galactic Council was silent, immersed in the emotional truth of what had happened on a small, quiet world. The Lumine delegate, a being of shifting crystalline light, was the first to break the silence. Its voice was like chiming bells. We have discussed resources and rules, but we have never felt that. To ignore such a capacity for perception is to blind ourselves. One by one, others agreed. The Torak delegates cited new trade possibilities for cultural exchange. The Vel, recalibrating, noted the useful conflict resolution applications of such empathic precognitive abilities. The vote was unanimous. Silin was granted permanent protected status, and the Muriog were offered an honorary seat on the Galactic Council as observers of consequence, with humanity asked to serve as their interlocutor, their voice, until they chose to speak for themselves in a way the galaxy could understand. Months later, Silin was quiet again, but it was a different quiet. It was the quiet of healing, not of neglect. The human science outpost was small, built with biodegradable materials that looked like part of the landscape. Captain Min-Su and Yuna Kim walked through the glowing forest one last time before the Guardian's repaired hull was due to depart. They found Hana sitting by the first glow lagoon with glimmer. The water shone with a soft blue light. Hana smiled up at them. "They're teaching me how the light tells the history of the seasons," she said. Min-Su nodded. He looked at Glimmer. "Thank you," he said, knowing words were not the point, but needing to say them anyway. Glimmer looked at him, then at Yuna, and at Hana. It placed a hand on the soil between them. From its touch, a tiny, new shoot of the bioluminescent moss began to grow, its light a steady, gentle pulse. Into their minds came a final, clear concept, accompanied by an image of the scarred but steadfast Guardian hanging in the starry sky above the peaceful world. A strong shield makes soft growth possible. It was not a thank you. It was a statement of fact. Humanity had not come as conquerors or saviors. They had simply chosen to stand in front of something beautiful and fragile when everyone else looked away. And in that choice, they had not only protected the Muriog, they had reminded a busy, cynical galaxy that sometimes the most